Hey, it's your BibaGirrrl again. I've decided that this time I've already done my makeup, but while I'm going to be chatting today, I'm going to be like sharpening my pencils and just kind of like going through my makeup bag, and I'll be talking about TV topics, but I'll be also be talking about products and stuff, kind of intermingled with the TV talk. One thing that came up is it's kind of interesting. Something I was already on the fence. I was already going to talk about, but then um, somebody else brought something up, and it made me think about the other topics I wanted to discuss. And we're all searching for connections. Part of the reason probably why you're following me is you made a connection with what I talk about, what I'm saying. And the internet is just amazing. We can connect. We can find someone that we have common interests with. We have someone that we think is funny, someone that we relate to, and so those are interesting things that we didn't have years and years and years ago. This generation of millennials, they've always grown up with it. I can remember, I'd say, mid to late 90s, finding old friends and finding common friends through chat rooms, and finding different people who watch the same shows through message boards or websites, and then later through various things, MySpace pages and other chat rooms and other things, and then then through Facebook and then Twitter, and all the people who are fans of this show just use this hashtag, and then these people find you, or tweet that show, and then the other people who. So it's kind of brought us together in a way that is really cool. But one thing I've noticed is that there are still um, ways that our people in our personal lives, we can disconnect from them much easier, and or they disconnect from us, as well as people in schools are more. There's less connections, and there's less ability to. It kind of seems like there's so many alienated kids, and there's so many people who feel that they're searching. And with that search, I saw there's this trend right now with um, on, like, say, TLC Channel, which used to be known as the Learning Channel. You had Long Island Medium, where people are searching to connect with people who passed on, and that with those connections, they're kind of healing something within themselves. Whether you believe that the Long Island Medium is actually able to channel, she's obviously able to connect with the person she's reading for and connect with them in a way that is healing for them. Okay? So that's something there. Even if she's saying a lot of the same things over and over again, she's validating their feelings about their loved one and their connections to their loved one. And there are oftentimes we need to hear that to kind of like to help us inside. Then there's this other show that's called Long Lost Family, and it's all about adopted kids wanting to search for their long lost family. Some of them are kids that actually knew their birth parents, and for whatever reason were put into foster care, and then, or they know that they were given up or taken away, or for whatever reason their parents couldn't take care of them, and they're searching for those parents. And so when you watch that show, like I started watching that show, I grew up in my birth family. I know what it's like to grow up with people who look like me, and I grew up with all the connections. Um, so, but I also know what it's like to feel kind of distant from them, because even though we do have our similarities, I'm different enough to kind of say, when I was have friends with other families and say, oh my God, I love going to their house because I feel so much more connected to that family. So anyway, it's interesting. Um, so that's another way that I see that you watch those shows, there are a lot of people out there who they'll say, I never felt like, even if they had a nice adoptive family, good experience, that they're searching for their families and they're searching for their real family. They're searching for that real connection. So you have, say, Long Island Medium, where people are searching from beyond, for people who passed on. You have people who are searching for people who, real family members, information family members who are still here. Then you have the, say, who do you think you are, where you have celebrities where they're searching in their past, in their family trees, kind of like for connections about, like, is there a history of this pattern in my family, or is or I'd like to know more about my past family history and how I can relate to it, or relate to it with my kids and my own personal history. So once again, you have people searching for connections. And I think that's rather interesting that you have on one channel three different shows. Three different shows. Well, that my phone did something very strange. It just gave me a weird message and then showed me a whole bunch of letters upside down. That was I just got a new phone, so now I'm like, it's always like doing weird things. That's a notification I've never even seen before. So if you know anything about that, let me know. But anyway, on the Learning Channel, you have these three different shows where people are searching for connections one way or the other, whether it's in the past, whether it's in their present to kind of heal something within their present, looking for their long lost family, or you have people searching for people who've already passed on to help heal the wounds that they're dealing with today. So it just goes to show you've got a lot of people who are searching for connections on a level that, for whatever reason, reality in real life, I mean, not reality TV, but it is reality TV, but their own real life, they're not getting that from the people around them, or what's happening in their life. Because I'm like, I would think that I grew up hearing about my family tree every day. If you grow up in a family where there's a long legacy of history, things to be proud of, especially when the current status is not all that great. And all you have to talk about is how great things were 200 or 300 years ago, and how this person did this, and this person was that, and don't forget that so-and-so did this, and da-da-da, wasn't that wonderful? You hear about that every day. I mean, I heard about my family history, where we came from, which branch came from here, which branch came from there, every day. So I'm always amazed, especially with celebrities, at how, especially on Who Do You Think You Are, how many people say, oh, growing up I didn't know anything about my family history, or I only knew about this part, but for whatever reason, and sometimes it was like maybe one side of the family didn't want to talk to each other anymore, or for whatever reason that parent didn't want to talk, and even that in of itself is sometimes a story. But anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. And then I happened to be online, and I caught a little bit of a conversation between two bloggers slash the people within the plus size community, and they were talking about how they were kind of cutting down Catfish on MTV, and they were saying how Catfish is like, oh, I can't believe it's still on. I can't believe that with Skype and FaceTime, that there are people who are foolish enough to believe that, oh, this person doesn't have this, and this person isn't who they are, and they're talking to someone for 5 years, and they're so lonely and pathetic they believe they allow themselves to get scammed. But I'm gonna say it's another example of a lonely person, a person that's going through something in their life, And even if they don't seem that outwardly lonely, it could be like the most popular football player in school. And for whatever reason, maybe his parents are going through a divorce or something when he was like 17. And it's now like 5 years later, he's getting out of college. And he's had other girlfriends, but he's always talked to this other girl online and with a beautiful picture. And for whatever reason, that online chat, or now, with texting, maybe now they just text each other. But for whatever reason, he's had a connection to this other person that he's never even met before. Maybe he can be more himself and be more honest with that stranger, that other person that he still hasn't met yet, than he can with people in his own life. He doesn't have to put up a front, And we all put up our fronts. We all put up our walls. We all put up our faces, our makeup, or whatever. And each image or each stereotype or whatever that we get into is sort of like our little wall that we all put up to kind of protection, and we play a role. And so because of that, sometimes those online people that we really don't meet face to face give us that little outlet. Now, one thing I have noticed that on Catfish, even once they find out, hey, this cute girl, let's just use that same analogy or the same example. Let's say this football player, jock dude, 5 years later after high school, they investigate and they find out, hey, the girl you're talking to is not that person. That's not to negate that connection that you have with that person that you have been texting with or chatting with or whatever. That person and you do have a relationship. Now, of course, often, if it was somebody using a pretty girl's profile, there's been cases where it's a very heavy girl that's insecure that used a pretty girl's profile that said, I used this other person's profile because I didn't think I could be accepted looking how I looked. Or sometimes it's a gay guy who was dealing with his own sexual issues. So then then there's like a shock there that there's actually two guys talking to each other, a straight guy talking to a gay guy, and he has to deal with the fact that he had actually been talking to a guy. Or there's a whole realm of things of who the big reveal of who it is they're actually going to talk to. But the fact that it gets to a point where they're going to say, oh, I'm going to move for this person because this connection is so real. Well, when people are ready to do that for people they haven't even met in person, there's obviously something going on with them that they feel such connection with that stranger that they're not getting in their own life. So I find that to be very interesting. Online relationships have really, whether it was reconnecting with old friends or finding new friends, I've always found online connections to be very good, although sometimes they have led to real relationships. I met my current husband through Match.com. My ex-husband, who I met years and years ago, I'm talking early 90s, I met through Personals ad. I've never had any problem with meeting a person like a blind date situation because I worked with the public every day for 33, 35 years, and I'm a shy person overall. I was a very shy, withdrawn person. But because I couldn't meet people in conventional ways, because meeting people just in random high school dating, it couldn't happen, and it just didn't work for me. I had to meet people outside of, whether it was high school and then college, because I didn't go to college right away, and I started working, and in the hair world, you're a working professional. By the time you're 19, 20, 21 years old, boom, you're out in the working world. So what else do you have besides going to bars or your own personal things? But my personal set of connections of friends, most of them were scattered all around the country, and they all went on to college and to various places. And the only time, and back then, was you'd be lucky if you had the number to their payphone in their dorm hallway, or if you had their parents' phone number, and to find out when they were going to come home. And so a lot of those good friends I'd only see when they came home Christmas breaks and summer breaks, Easter, spring break, whatever. And then we'd have fun summers, hang out, and then everybody go back to wherever they were going to school. And then the hardest thing was the alienation of when everybody decided to go away to grad school, and I'm still in our hometown, and I'm still working, and it's 5 years later, and everybody decided so we're going to go stay where we went to grad school, or we're going to do this, and people were getting married, or not getting married, but moving away, and this is pre-email, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, it's just me and this other girl who didn't go away to school, and that's it. And I had connections that I worked with, but as everybody knows, you really, sometimes you're lucky if you find good connections at work, but a lot of times you don't, and especially in the beauty industry where there's a lot of transition in terms of jobs, but also it can be very backstabby, and there's a lot of drama, and a lot of gossip, and whatever. So I'm just saying that still kind of goes on, even with people with email, with Snapchat, with Twitter, with Facebook, all that stuff. There's a lot of stuff that happens, and you can lose connections with people, or you lose touch with people you thought were fun, or people move on, and friendships fade, and relationships fade, and even I've had to phase people out, or say limit my time, or set limits with how much stuff I'm going to be dealing with from some people. So we're always searching for those connections. So I never put down anyone for how they meet somebody. I don't feel like whatever, so just like I don't usually put down people for their music taste. I'm like, hey, whatever floats your boat. Just this morning I had some friends, they were talking about a certain concert, and they were saying how, a friend of mine saw this concert, and they said it really sucked, and I said, actually, I knew somebody who had a good time at that show, but there were a lot of drunks there. I said, but that band was never my favorite band. But I'm like, hey, if going to that concert gives you a break from the day-to-day grind, more power to you. Go for it, have fun. Life's too short. And it might not be my cup of tea, but if it helps you get through the day, whatever. And I'm that way with everything. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about those kinds of shows because I think there's a good place for that. I'm glad to see that there is a. I'm looking for the pencil pencil sharpener for this. These little pencils. I'm glad that there's a good place for that, and that people are seeing that there are a lot of people who are searching. Now, of course, one thing I have noticed that I'm kind of tired of, and they even touched on, I was watching, was the show The People's Couch last night, and they were talking about this show, it was Hotel Hell, and they were saying how this, they had like Gordon Ramsay going to this hotel, and even the hotel, the people that own the hotel had a sad backstory. Now, it's not to say we all have backstories. And then they even said, one of the girls on the couch said, why do we have to hear the sad backstory? Can't we just know that, that your hotel sucks? And I, on one hand, I agree. They can get to a point where these shows where, of course, whose backstory is sadder, whose story is sadder than the last person, and it gets to be a little redundant, and it just gets to be like too much. So, you just get to a point where it's like, it's oversaturation with the sad backstory, because granted, I grew up at a time where people, you didn't even hear people say whatever kind of cancer somebody had. Now they'd say, oh, someone's recovering from breast cancer, or someone has this, or so. They would just say, cancer. And, of course, now people say, because of the various charities, and people will say, this. And I can remember having a surgery around the early 80s as different people, they wanted to draw attention to those specific, whether it was breast cancer, whether it's ovarian cancer, whether it's prostate cancer, this cancer. And now people do fundraisers. There's more, there's more survivors, and there's more better treatments and things. But so there's they have a tendency. I'm not saying always, but I'm saying that often it can be used as a plot point. Now, that takes me to the next topic that I want to discuss. The next topic I want to discuss is pregnancies being used as plot points in shows. Now, when this was brought to my attention, I happened to just brought it up as a topic oh, there goes the train again. I brought this up as a topic of discussion to my husband, who is an actor. And he was like, actresses have been planning their pregnancies around their roles for years. Now, I said, yes, but that was them planning not to get pregnant so they could keep a role. Or sometimes there would be like a big deal and there would be a scandal if there was a certain type of pregnancy. Or they had a thing where they didn't want the producer or someone to find out that they were pregnant when they took a certain role because they knew they'd lose the role. Now that's not what's the big deal here. What the big deal with this, what I'm talking about is these reality shows using pregnancies as a plot point for the actual show. Now, it's one thing if you're watching a show called Teen Mom. Okay, that's all about teen. It's a show you're watching Teen Mom. You expect to see a show about teen moms, but they were talking about the context of which, let's say, those people for a family from 19 Kids and Counting. Their show got canceled because one of the brothers, the older brother, turned out he had been allegedly or proven, I don't know exactly what legally the word I should use, or allegedly molesting or I guess one of his sister, I guess it was, or it was groping, or I don't really know the context of what the right legal word to use, but I'm just going to say allegedly, and so they decided to cancel the show. So the two popular sisters, I would call them sort of like the Kardashians of that family, and I don't even know that family, the Duggars, yeah, the cuter sisters of, the prettier sisters of that family that had a big social media following, TLC, once again, decided to give those girls their own show. And it's called Counting On. And I guess they're married with babies, and I guess their marriages and their engagements were a big deal because they weren't even allowed to do more than hug their fiancés when they were dating them, and they always had to have chaperones, and it's a very conservative situation, very conservative faith and religion. And so now they're trying to have more kids of their own. And so they have been accused of planning their pregnancies around the seasons of the show so that their show would stay on the air. Now, that is something that's been going on for, it seems like, quite some time in terms of a lot of these reality shows, because, I don't know if you watch on Lifetime, Little Women in LA, all those, not all, but most who are on that show are now either pregnant or getting pregnant or trying to get pregnant, and it's become a plot point of how are they going to tell their friends that they're pregnant, and then it becomes when are they going to tell their boyfriends / husbands that they're pregnant. Then it becomes how they're going to tell their parents if it's a pregnancy that's going to have health issues. Then it's the drama of the pregnancy, and then it's the actual birth drama. And then it's we're bringing the baby home, and how are they handling it, and all that. And I think we saw that in K plus John and K plus 8. I noticed that my friends who had small children or were taking care of small children or around small children really got into how they were dealing with multiples, or how they were into handling babies. I myself, I don't have kids. I don't consider that entertainment. I do find it interesting sometimes where like how organized they are as a family and trying to get certain things done. And I think some families do a better job. I personally like, if I'm going to watch a show with families with kids, I prefer the little couple, just because they seem not to argue and they seem to work things out pretty good, and they're pretty happy. The kids are happy, and it's a nice half hour. It's a nice break, as opposed to some family where the husband and wife is arguing and not happy, and the kids are crying. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and the parents are snapping each other. I don't need to tune in for that. I can go to my friends' houses and see that, and or go to other people's homes, and that's just too much reality for me. And everybody's different. Everybody has their taste, but that has been used as a plot point for quite some time. But the fact that apparently these two sisters have been doing, I think now I'm pretty sure. I'm not. I would say with the way the Kardashians film, that could be the case in terms of. But at the same time, I think sometimes that they were getting, maybe like with Courtney's pregnancies, or some of them, some was a plot thing of that. This person, Kim, was trying and she was able to succeed the second time, or trying and even the first time, and doing all these things to find out why she wasn't. And so in some ways that can be very informative, and in other ways it can be, and you can learn, but in other ways, to those of us who, if we don't have the money or the access to some of those alternatives, or it can almost be like, wow, here's a way that they're doing it, but we might not be able to afford that, so it's kind of like out of our realm, or the TV show is helping to pay for it. And even if they say, oh, we can't afford this, and they say in the show, well, obviously somehow they're on the show, and the show has the money to send them to these doctors, just like getting plastic surgery after having a baby, like Kate's, if anyone paying attention to John and Kate Plus 8, her whole makeover, a lot of her makeover, the show paid for her tummy tuck and paid for her, because I don't know anyone who's had more than 2 kids, 3 kids, 4 kids. Now there are a few. I mean, I'll give them credit. I know of a few people who have been able to have 4 babies and look phenomenal, and even maybe look even better than how they looked before. But the size of her when she was pregnant, when she had 2 twins and then 6, the amount of her stomach was stretched out. I know very few women who could have bounced back from that without help. So anyway, so that becomes a whole thing, and plot point, and so it's sort of like, a lot of people are very into watching that, and becomes a huge thing. So to me, I'm like, well, even though the Duggars really aren't my favorite people in the world, and I'm kind of like not about that level of blind faith in any kind of faith. That's just my own personal thing. Don't hate me. Don't send me a million tweets on it. I don't, there's nothing you can do to change my mind. But I do feel that, if they were, using the calendar to say, hey, if we're going to be filming here and we're going to do this, and they're trying to practice the method where they could count and make it be like counting on, like the show's name, counting on, counting, and be able to figure out if they were plotting their pregnancies around the show, that's just apparently that's showbiz right now. So I don't really think they're any guiltier than anybody else, especially when reality TV casts mainly women in their childbearing years. I have been trying to get on a reality show for the last 6 years, I was a little bit above the age group. At 6 years ago, I was just a hair above the age group that for a certain show that was casting. That was and it was about plus size women, and then it was dating. And so at that point, I was married, so I couldn't do it. But they still could have had me on as a part of their show as a success of here is someone plus size woman who dated and found someone. But they only choose women during their childbearing years for two reasons, and I really believe this, because pregnancies add to the drama of the show, as well as usually women past childbearing years, past a certain age. Once a woman gets to past 40, they're a little less dramatic. We become a little less dramatic, and I know at this point I'm now 51, and you tend to step back from drama, But if they want drama in their TV shows, they want someone who's just going to blurt out and say whatever anyone wants to hear, and they want someone who's going to throw a fit at a party, and they want this kind of thing for the most part. Now, New York Housewives, that's a whole other story, because they're all alphas, and they get chosen to be alphas, and, I'm an alpha, so I could probably, they're sort of like, I could probably fit in with them and hold my own. But there are many times where I'm at a party, and for the sake of not making the hostess feel bad, I won't say something. So, am I the troublemaker? Sometimes, no. And am I going to be the person that's rude and gets called out and that gets paid extra for causing a scene? No, that's not me. Maybe if I had a monetary incentive, maybe I would speak my mind more. But anyway, so that's that. So that's something. Those are things that people don't realize, is they purposely are hiring people that they know during a certain time period that they're not hiring those who are in healthy relationships often. If someone goes for I'd say an audition or some of these things, and they're in a relationship with a guy who's somewhat volatile, or a relationship that seems dysfunctional, they'd rather hire that person than hire someone who's in a pretty decent relationship, because they can't make a storyline out of that. They can't put a camera in a nice, healthy relationship home where they might have some tension about, who's going to take out the trash, or do you feel like, didn't we have spaghetti 2 days in a row, or, just day-to-day random stuff. They don't want that. They want the real crazy, and they want a level of crazy. So that's what they're choosing to hire when they cast the shows. And they know if they hire alpha women that have sometimes from a dysfunctional situation. I know when I was in my 20s, 30s, I was a lot more, if you think I'm dramatic now, you think I talk a lot now, you think I'm crazy now, I'm calm compared to the person I was 30 years ago. I'm zen. I'm compared to I was 20 or 30 years ago. Every day was, any time that I didn't hear from a boyfriend or now ex-husband, but drama with him, or in that marriage, or you'd be like, oh, I'm sick of this family, I can't take it, I have learned ways of coping much better. Now, it's not to say there are some days where it sucks, and there are some days where certain things are, a problem. But I've just learned, by the time you get in your 40s, 50s, I'm talking about, I go to networking meetings, I meet with other professional women, I meet with women who own their own businesses, I meet with women who are successes, I meet with women who aren't that successful, but they're trying to be successful. They're working together. Sometimes there might be a catty comment here and there, but overall, it's a feeling of support, and a feeling of working together. And sometimes there's some clicks and sometimes there's some issues, but it's done more underhandedly, and overall you just say, well, I don't want to stay in that group, I'll just join some other group. You don't throw a drink on somebody, you just kind of say, okay, I'm just not going to go anymore, and you just find a better group and you meet with them. That's how it is, but that's not what most people would tune into. So anyway, so if you like what I've been saying and you like what I have to say, I'm just going to do a short video today, trying to wrap things up. If you connect with me and you connect with what I'm saying, a lot of times I'm kind of making sense of a lot of this stuff and kind of keeping it real in terms of putting it all in perspective. And or if you like what I have to say, give me your comments. Talk to me. I'm really enjoying some of the feedback I've been getting back and forth about some of the plus size things I've said, and but and as well as that, and but on YouTube, please subscribe if you like what I have to say. Please share my videos with wherever you share videos: Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, email. Share it with your friends. Also, hit thumbs up if you like what I have to say. And I hope you have a great Memorial Day weekend. Keep safe, have fun, and do it with style. Okay? Great. See you next week. Thanks. Bye.